So, back to what Augustine says. Augustine says, here's something which is absolutely certain. Here's something that's nearly impossible to disagree about. And this is something that you can use as a moral guide for yourself. Okay. This is chapters 6, 7, and 8 from our book. Okay. Now, the proof he gives here, I think, works. It sounds a little funny, but I think it works. Okay. Augustine says, do you think that things should be ordered or disordered? Are things better off when they're ordered properly or when they're disordered? Now, sort of by definition, order means when things are put in their proper, correct place. So it's really hard to think that disorder would be better. Okay? And he says, okay, maybe we'll be able to figure out what's certainly good and bad if we can figure out if there's one true, immutable, meaning unchangeable, order that governs everything and everyone in the world. Okay? So this is what chapter 6 does, is it sort of praises this order and it links it to human reason. Just quickly, the link between reason and order is this. The smarter you are, the more likely you are to see patterns in the world. And the more experience you have in life, the more likely you'll be able to tell what's better and what's worse. So if you combine pattern and better and worse together, you just get order. Now, since reason or smartness allows you to see patterns, and since experience, which is its own form of intelligence, experience gives you a better idea of what's genuinely good and what's genuinely bad, you stick those two together, recognition of what's truly good and recognition of patterns, and you get order defined as the general pattern of good and bad. We'll see more on this later because the whole reading is connected. So this point is sort of announced now. It's like foreshadowing, and it gets proven in what we're about to do. So, Augustine asks in chapter 7, he basically says, do you know you're alive? And Evodius says, is this a trick question? Yeah, Dad, I know I'm alive. He says, okay, we're going somewhere with this. He says, trust me, this is philosophical method. He says, so you know that you're alive. Are knowing and alive the exact same thing, though? So you know that you're alive, but are those the exact same thing? And Evodius correctly says, no, they're different. Well, how do you know they're different? If the question is, do you know you're alive, they seem related, right? Well, here's what Evodius and Augustine figure out. Oh, animals are alive, but they don't know they're alive. And if you think that animals do know they're alive, fair enough. We can just say plants are alive, but don't know they're alive. Or you could even say, when you're asleep, you're alive, but you don't know you're alive. When you're in a coma, you're alive, but you don't know you're alive. Animals are his example, though, so we'll stick with that. Animals are alive, but don't know they're alive. Actually, I do want to challenge those of you who think that animals might know you're alive, just to give Augustine some credit here, and because we'll use this point going forward. Animals probably have a sense of themselves and some awareness of what they're doing. But they don't have consciousness like we do in the sense that you can tell a story to yourself about yourself. You can give a narrative account of your life. So you're much more than merely aware that there's a body which is yours and that it's doing things in the world. Animals surely have that kind of awareness. But animals aren't conscious and self-conscious and what we call reflexively conscious because they don't ever stop while grazing and go, you know what? I grazed here yesterday. Maybe I should switch it up. Maybe I should go check out that other meadow. The wolf never eats a sheep that's been grazing in the meadow and then says, am I a bad person? No, this is natural. This is what I have to do. No, I'm not a bad person. You know, that sort of internal monologue that says I, that reflects on the past, that imagines about the future, that can tell lies if it wants to? That level of rationality, that kind of knowing, that we usually call self-consciousness or reflexive consciousness, or narratives about oneself. Animals don't seem to have that. Okay? I don't think Harambe's, final thought was, goodbye, cruel world. I hope there's a heaven. It was probably an awareness of bodily pain, but not conscious, oh, I'm slipping away from this world. I'm shuffling off this mortal coil. Okay. So Augustine says there's a difference between knowing and living, because some living things merely live and some things know that they live. Remember, this is all supposed to be logic. This isn't Augustine describing how he thinks. This isn't like his opinion on animals. This is him trying to figure out certain absolutely true, indisputable facts about human existence. So the point is not just to remember what he said here, but to try to think if it's ironclad, if there's any exceptions to this rule, if there's any good reason to believe it or disbelieve it. Okay, so then Augustine goes on. Remember, he says, do you know you're alive? That's step 1. Step 2 is the answer, yes. Step 3 is, but is knowing and living, are they the same thing? Step 4, the answer is, no, they're different. Step 5, we say, well, why are they different? Step 6, he says, we know they're different because some things we know are alive some things which are alive do not know they're alive, and yet I'm alive and know I'm alive, so that in some things they're combined and in some things they're separate, means that they're in fact separate and not identical terms. Okay, so the next step, the one I haven't said yet, is Augustine says, which one do you think is better? What do you think is better? Being alive or being alive and knowing it? Be precise here. The question is not what's better, knowing or being alive. The question is what's better, being alive or being alive plus knowing it? I don't know. It seems pretty inarguable that being alive and knowing it is better. So the end result is page 17. He says, good, we've understood and we've reached the conclusion that there's a difference between mere life, just living, and a better life, living plus knowledge of living. So I want you to see the general method used here. Augustine is not starting out telling you that something's good because he thinks it's good. He doesn't start out telling you that something's bad because, he doesn't like it or it causes him pain. He thinks he's using pure logic that everyone can agree upon, and that individual differences don't make much. They don't change anything. So you could be 17 and think that knowing plus living is better than living alone. You could be 86. You could be sick. You could be healthy. Man, woman, Hindu, Islam, Islamic people, Jewish people, etc. Right? Everyone can agree on that. Now, it's not just that we can agree on that, because we can agree that the sun is up during the daytime and it's not up at night. So what? The point is that for some crystal clear truths upon which we can all agree, there's going to be a moral or ethical idea hidden in there that we can use. The point is basically this, just as page 17 says, in just talking about what the difference between a human and an animal is, we've already stumbled upon another truth that's ethical about what's good and bad. It's better to know about your life than it is to just live your life. That is, it's better, and so you should seek to know yourself and not just be or live yourself. I think that's really cool. I think that's fascinating. We were talking about animals and we started to figure out what might be the best possible human life. Okay? I just want to hold this up as an example as well. There are many people today who will say that morality is all down to individual choice, that there's no capital W wrong and capital R right for all of us. But Augustine has shown here that at least there's a possibility that it's always better to know and live than to merely live that exact same life. Okay, so life plus that knowledge of life is always better than the mere life itself. So chapter 8 extends this theme and it says, hey, animals are actually really good at stuff that human beings aren't. Tigers are stronger, dogs can smell things, miles away. Sharks are just awesome at everything. My example, not Augustine's. And he says, well, so what's the difference or what's the superiority between humans and animals? And he says, I think it's the thing we've just been talking about. It's not, for instance, he says, that human beings can laugh and animals can't. It's not that human beings make reality TV shows and animals don't. It's that we have this reason, that is, this ability to know things about ourselves and not just be ourselves. We can know and evaluate, as we'll see later, we can measure our lives, see how good they are, instead of just living our lives. So this is what Augustine says. This ties together a number of the points we've made so far. Almost all of them, in fact. He says, we've just shown that to know and live is better than to merely live. We've also said that goodness in general is going to be knowing the order of what's best and what's not as good. We've also said that immorality or sin is knowingly choosing the lower or lesser thing rather than the higher or better thing. So the title of chapter 8 is Reason Should Be Master in Human Life. And this is how we tie all of this together. You are able to recognize things, no matter how smart or unintelligent you might be. You're able to recognize certain things like to live and know is better than to just live. You also have a preference for doing what's good over what's bad, just in general. I mean, you don't ever just take a hammer and smash your hand with it, right? In general, you do what you think is good. Now, we've defined sin as choosing the lower rather than the higher. Having a desire for what's beneath you rather than what will elevate you. In general, what we're going to see here is that to avoid sin, you should choose your mind over your body. Because your mind is what allows you to know, and your body's only what allows you to live. However, this doesn't mean that you deny or kill or hate your body, because you're not going to live very long without your body, but that you guide the body according to the mind. You guide your animal nature according to reason. So think about it this way. Hopefully you all agreed that it's better to know and live together than it is to merely live. Now we sort of sharpen that question. If your mind and body are two different kinds of things, and let's pause here and note that minds and bodies do seem to be two different kinds of things, because animals have the body living thing down pat, but don't seem to have the knowing thing. Or fine, say again for plants. Plants have life and a physical body, but don't have any knowledge. Then it seems that bodies can exist without minds, and therefore minds should be able to exist without bodies. Or at least that the two are very different kinds of things. So, do you think it would be ordered or disordered if your body was in control of your mind? Another way to put this is, what would be the best order, the most sensible and the best order? If minds could guide bodies, or if bodies could guide minds? Think about it this way. If you have houseplants, do you think it's better that you decide when the houseplant gets watered? Or would it make more sense to you if the houseplant decided when you ate? I mean for that to be an absurd question. Because for Augustine, it's just that obvious. It's like if I asked you, do you think it's better if 8 is the larger number or if 4 is the larger number? You'd say, 8. That's the order. That's the way it is and the way it should be. So this is what Augustine says. He says, wouldn't it be silly? Wouldn't it be absurd if circus animals were the ones in charge of the circus? Wouldn't it be absurd if wild animals told human beings how to live in cities, rather than human cities telling animals where they can and can't live? It's hard to even imagine that being possible, right? So it seems logically absurd. Now think ethically in the big sense of ethical, just as good or bad. Do you think it's better that you can tell the cow how to live? You can milk it, you can protect it from diseases with antibiotics, etc. Or do you think the world would be better off, better ordered, please put in your notes. Do you think the world would be better off or better ordered if the cow was the one giving you instructions on how to live? If the cow decided when you should have medical treatment, and the cow decided whether you should eat hay or alfalfa, that world would suck, right? It would be literally a bad or disordered world. Once more, all this is combining everything we've done up to this point. Your life is bad or disordered. It literally does not make sense, and it's bad for you when you let your body dictate what you're going to do. I'll say that again. The world is better, it makes more sense, and the results are more good. So the world is rational and ethical when minds decide what bodies do instead of doing whatever the body wants. Ethics then is going to be making decisions through your free will which pursue the natural order of the world, that don't just do whatever bodies, animals, and your own body which wants alcohol and wants to fight and wants to have sex. You don't just do whatever the body wants, but you guide the body as human beings guide animals. Ta-da! That's how it all comes together. So we'll end this recording with a question. A series of questions around these themes. Do you actually think that your mind and body are different? That's one question. Second question is, do you think that animals have a mind at all like our kind of mind? Are there any differences? And so what I'd like you to focus on here are what are the differences between animal minds and our own minds? Okay, a third question would be, can you think of any time in which the body should, I don't want to say direct because that won't work for Augustine, but that you should listen only to the body and do whatever the body wants and not listen to your mind or soul? So are there any times where you should ignore the mind and only go with what the body wants? So pause the recording. Well, we'll end the recording now actually and think about those thoughts and post your thoughts in the discussion board. Next, we'll continue these thoughts about what should be, mind should control body, and make that a little more clear that Augustine says minds always can control bodies, bodies can never control minds. That's our next step. The point being that you have a free will in your mind that can always choose, and the body never forces you to choose. That'll be our next recording. Thank you, everyone.